Hello, my name's James. I'm a portrait photographer from Portsmouth in the UK. You've probably not heard of me, and I welcome you to this, our latest video, looking at portfolio reviews here on the Portrait of a Wrestler YouTube channel. You are welcome. Today we are looking at the work of Emma Dockrell. Emma Dockrell, photographer based up in Glasgow, north of the border in Bonnie, Scotland. Just having a look at her Instagram feed here. You can follow her at Emma Dockrell. Real mixture in here. Some sort of drag shows, I guess, in there. Some ICW, some music stuff, some wildlife stuff. Real mixture in there. So go and check it out. Give her a follow. She submitted 10 wrestling images for us to have a look at today from her portfolio. So without further ado, let's start off with image number one. This is the first time I've seen them. As ever, I like to go into these cold and to see these. To see these as they were sort of meant to be seen. So let's have a look at number one here of Jack Jester, I believe, up on this is great connection. This is superb. Good connection with the photographer here. Really lovely. The way that he's looking straight down the middle of the lens. So what that says to me is that you obviously have a very, very good relationship with the guys and girls that you work with, and that means that they're looking out for you. I think that's really, really lovely. I like the full length of it. I just knock out this little bit here. Just this tiny little bit of white tape or whatever it is being from the framework there, and just have that taken out. Have a look at these flare elements here. Have a look around those. Bring those levels in. Make a big thing of those spotlights. You could potentially in Photoshop even extend the spotlights out over here to this side here, and really darken that background a little bit to draw our eye into Jack in the middle, because that is a hell of an expression. Hell of an expression and a really, really good feel to the photo. It just needs a little bit of attention to detail just to really sort of harness it and harness that contrast and harness those levels. But really, really good shot to open up with. Thank you very much for sharing that one with us, Emma. Next one here. It's okay. It's good, but it's difficult because we're looking at like working with the lighting that we're given when we're working in events like this, and depending on the show that you're at, depends on the lighting that you're given and the lighting that you have to work with. I don't think there's a lot of interest either side of this image. I don't think it suits the landscape crop. I would potentially have an experiment and just see what that looks like with a portrait crop, with these lights just and bring some of the colour out of those lights in the background, lighten it up a little bit, and really frame him against those lights. It's difficult because we've got a little bit of detail in the eyes, but not a lot. So if we haven't got the detail in there, it's difficult to rectify it back. So maybe even just darken the whole thing out. It looks like a dark character anyway. So darken the whole thing out and just really bring out that contrast and just create something that's just got a tiny little bit more impact in terms of the levels and in terms of those darker tones to make everything sort of pop out of it a little bit more. Have a little bit of an experiment with it, because that crop, we're not like properly landscape, we're not square, we're not portrait either, so we're kind of, it kind of looks like we're halfway between the two, possibly. And I know why you've kept this little spotlight at the top here in, but it is very, very bright, and you've got the light coming, the triangular light coming off of it anyway. It's a bit bright. I would potentially just look at maybe bringing that crop down just a little bit and just losing that, but having the shape, the triangular shape of the light coming down from it is really, really important. Next one here. So I believe this is probably working with the next one, which is Jodie. Of course it's Jodie. Of course. Bless. Jodie's like one of my favourites to work with. He's just fantastic. But you've got the crowd in behind here. Now this shot here, as hench as Jodie's back is, as we know, the shot here really for me, because of the back of his head, is about the crowd in the background, and they're just a little dark. It's difficult. It's a difficult one, but you see everyone looking up, and with the camera phones and with the hands over the eyes so they can't see you, because they can't see because of the spotlight. I think that's potentially where that shot is. It's difficult because you're in the moment and it's got to happen quick, and you've got to be quick, right? It's a tough one to marry up. Of the two of them, I don't know. I think I probably prefer this one. I mean, it's difficult. This is a good moment, but the focus has fallen onto our subjects in the foreground, which it should. but it's not really on the archway. And wouldn't it be, this is where you got to make a judgment call in the moment, and it's tough. It's tough. And I've been in that situation myself where it's like, okay, am I focusing on, particularly with raucous crowds, and I know ICW is that, it's difficult to know whether you're focusing on the action or you want to focus on the reactions of the fans, and you can't go back and change it. And when things happen quickly, you have to stick by your decision. We've chosen to focus on the foreground here. I think that focus on the background maybe would have led to something a bit different in that image. And to really, and it's so difficult, like I said, I feel bad asking you to do different things, because it's, I know I've been in this situation, I know it's such a quick moment, but this area here in the bottom left hand corner isn't really telling us anything of a story. So it's a case of like, be a little bit braver, lean a little bit over, and really try and focus on that crowd and get as many faces in that as possible as everything unfolds. You know, I think that's why I prefer this one, because there is more of the crowd. There is the branding of the ICW. You don't really need the logo in the bottom right hand corner because the branding is all there. Everything's telling a story there, and I think there's less of that here. You need this element, this triangular element, and it'd be really cool if we had his hand on this one up close there, grabbing on to that rail, you know. But it's so difficult because it's so quick. But it's a great moment to say, I caught that, I captured that, and I captured Jodie Fleisch doing something ridiculous. Which, if you've ever captured any Jodie Fleisch match, you'll know it's a high chance that that's going to happen to you. So I hope you take that feedback on board in as positive way as I'm trying to give it to you there. M-Dog, Matt Cross, great guy, good for photos, always says yes. He's a lovely, lovely guy, very respectful, very lovely guy. Good moment. I've done this in some of my tutorials on this channel here where I've just taken out ring ropes, and for me, have an experiment with it and just see what that looks like without that ring rope in the background. It helps to someone who doesn't know that it's wrestling photography. It does help explain what he's bowing in front of, but it is running through the middle of the frame. And one thing I'd like to point out to you is that it's not quite symmetrical. It's not quite parallel. It's just on that angle, you know, and that's what makes it just a little bit distracting for me in the, and it's just not quite straight. And that with this line coming through the top here, this blue line at the top here, let's just bring you in nice and close so you can see that. That blue line in the top just coming from the top isn't quite symmetrical. The rim light behind, we want it, bam, right behind the head. So we're rim lighting the whole back of that head. Just coming out the top is giving us flare. It's making it the brightest point of the picture, and it's creating just a little bit of distraction. And again, right at the bottom of the frame, you've got the white rope sort of coming in, then tapering off towards the end. So it's neither in nor out. Tiny adjustments to your camera position when you're taking the shot. Always, so when you're looking at it, you're thinking, first thing you're thinking is, oh my God, what a moment, what an emotional moment he's giving us here. But I'm always thinking in the back of my head, where are my lights? Where are my lights? Where are the stage lights? Where are the stage lights? Where can I position? And once you start looking around at your spotlights, and then you try and position those heads clean behind the spotlights, you start getting cleaner images. So just have a look at that. But great moment, lovely moment, and lovely, lovely. I've seen this one. This is Ophidian. What a character. So real intensity in the eyes here, which is great. There's a bit of grain in there. I'd like a bit of digital grain in there when we go a little bit close up. And he's very close to that backdrop. Now, I appreciate that these places that you're working won't have the most amount of space. But because he's so close to that backdrop, we can see the cloth and the detail in the fabric. If you start bringing your subjects away from the backdrop, if you're working with either, you know, with continuous light or with flashlight, if you start bringing them away from black backdrops, you'll see that there's less of a fall off on the backdrop. And by less of a light fall off, what I mean is there's less chance that backdrop will get exposed and it'll go a cleaner black. Then you can start working with rim lights and separation lights and getting something a little bit different. I think though, and this is like, in all fairness to you, I think like the exposure and the camera settings have all been handled fairly well here. I like the use of the light from one side to give us depth and shape and form to the picture. But I'm not convinced on the crop, and I think, and by that I mean just like the arms are either in nor out of the picture. And I think maybe just have a look at maybe a slightly closer crop just around, and just really bringing our eyes into looking at those eyes and looking at the detail of the mask and the detail of the things that we've got on the denim jacket might lead us to a slightly more impactful image there. Same again, we're right up against the cloth work here, which is fine, but what we've chosen to do on this image, which I think is really interesting, is we've gone for a low angle, and that low angle has given us a slightly intimidating sort of perception, point of view. Good expression from our subject. Let's have a look at those lights. Light again in the same place, top right, but it's at 2 o'clock on the eyes, right between the pupil and the iris, which is perfect for classical portrait lighting. I like the low angle, but what I'm drawn to is the mark down here, and I kind of like that. And I'm also drawn to these fists. Take a chance next time. Bring those fists in, position them on the thirds around that frame, get the head in there, even go for a slightly lower angle, and have an experiment with focusing on the fists and the tape and not the face. And it might see that you draw your eye in and you're looking at the physique and you're looking at the marks and you're looking at the wounds and you're looking at everything else before you actually come up to the face. And that might just be something that's just a little bit different. Not convinced on the crop at the bottom here, just because everything's so monochromatic within that. You know, we make a great black and white picture. Essentially everything we've got in there is whites, blacks and skin tones, and then you come to the bottom and there's this flash of red at the bottom, which is just a little bit distracting. Let's simplify that just a little bit and have a look at just looking at it from a slightly different angle in a slightly different way, and using your camera in a slightly different way to create a slightly different sort of perspective there on that shot. GPWA. It's a hell of a moment, and I go out, you know, my thoughts go out to you. This is, you know, you're speaking to a photographer that appreciates this. The lighting here looks low, so you're not working with a lot of light, and you got that big spotlight in the background. I assume maybe two more, but it looks like a shot that was taken at low light. So you're struggling with grain, you're struggling to keep that shutter speed nice and fast, which we need for these high action sequences, but you've managed it. What I would say, big distracting element of the arm here, potentially lose that. Maybe even go zoom and just try and capture the moonsault on its own, because essentially what we got here is not the biggest crowd in the background, but sadly one girl who's sort of, some of them I suppose, or one woman, sorry, who aren't as invested as they possibly could be. And with that in mind, what we then have to focus on is, okay, well, if we can't show off like a big attendance to our promoter or for ourselves, then maybe we should be focusing on the performers. And working ringside with a long lens is one way to kind of do that. And it's one way to give you completely different angles. So because I don't think what you need to do is accentuate the positives, hide the negatives. What you haven't got here is a very grand arena or particularly sort of like a raucous crowd. But what you have got is clean backgrounds. You've got clean blacks and clean reds, and you've got performers who are willing to do amazing things like this. So let's focus on those and make them occupy the frame when we're sort of working these sort of slightly smaller venues, I guess. So that's made me laugh. I like that one. Somehow he's managed to catch you all the way back there, right in the middle of the lens. It's good. It's, again, we've not controlled our background lights are very, very bright at the back here, very blue as well, which is, it's again not something that you can control, but it is distracting, or it's fighting against this foreground. We've chosen to go a wide angle, so we've got all things like tag ropes on the side here, we've got the camera guy on the side here, some of the commentary team are very, very bright on the side here, and I think again we're looking at how can we simplify this. And it's difficult as well when you're this far back. Have you got the option to go straight on? Have you got the option to be square to the ring? If you don't, then maybe a longer lens and trying to pick out those details is the way to go, rather than this sort of off-center, this sort of off-center position on a wide-angle lens, where everything is, you're trying to bring in your straight parallel lines, and those ring ropes are getting wider and wider as they go down. And it's just, everything just feels a little bit off center, but I feel like I've been hugely critical because we've managed to, the timing on the moment is great, and the look into the camera is great as well. Really good. So work on that. It's clear to me that you're getting a good relationship with these guys. And if they're looking out for you, like we saw the picture of Jester right at the top, those are where you're going to get magic moments, by building up on those little bit of relationships with the guys as they go out to the ring. See, and I've spoken before about getting this moonsault right on the archway, but this is the other way, and this is abstract, and I think this is great. This is a lovely shot, beautiful timing, great look, good form. Now, you know where I'm going to go with this. Referee in the background is completely obscured from the face up. It's really distracting, and without him there, then we've got a clearer narrative. But what else is this? There's two other things in this narrative that I'm looking at that I think actually we could have a really, really cool picture. I've just noticed the hand down there, which is funny. First thing about this narrative is it's a really, really old traditional venue. It's got a lovely little archway here, lovely little detail here on the side. It's a really lovely venue, and it's been fairly well lit with these spotlights, so we can just see some of the detail in the venue in the background, but we spotlighted the action in the middle. But the other thing about this narrative, other than the action in the ring, are these guys up here. And look how invested these kids look, leaning over the balcony with their masks on, watching every move, every sinew, everything that happens. To them, this is the biggest show. This is the biggest wrestling show that's ever been put on. And I think when we just look at that and we crop in there a little bit tighter, maybe a black and white conversion, so we haven't got all these distracting colours, and so that with the black and white conversion, what you'll find is that he becomes the brightest thing because of his white tights. Then we've got a real clear little narrative there. And it's a really sweet little shot. Watch the skin tones here, all overexposed against the guy who's on the bottom there. So again, shooting raw, you can rescue some of those tones slightly because it's very difficult to get them right all the time. But he'll be, if we go for a black and white conversion, or even as we are now, he is fighting for him in terms of who is the most important thing in this image because of the brightness. The most important thing in this image is the guy doing the moonsault here, and the kids watching him on board from there. Good moment, just a few little things, and just think about that narrative and think about the story we're trying to tell all the way through it. So that's great. Thank you very much to Emma for submitting your images. I hope you found that useful. I hope you found that helpful. We are doing portfolio reviews throughout this time as complimentary services to anyone who inside or outside the photography industry. If you're an amateur, if you're a professional, if you're a semi-pro, you can send them through to me, portraitofaWrestler@gmail.com, and we'll explain to you how it works. You can follow me at Y2JimBob on the socials, on the Twitter and the Instagram. It's Portrait of a Wrestler everywhere else. And as ever, all the very best.